Go ahead and get started with our next session. It's number 18, section 18, pastoral transitions in churches. It's page 89 in your study guide. Go ahead and turn to that. And it may not be what you think just by the topic of it, but what we're going to be talking about is transitioning through stages of growth as much as it is transitioning in pastoral types and people. And so we're going to be looking at several different aspects of it here. And it's kind of interesting on how this is unfolding as we go through the lesson. So page 89, pastoral transition in churches. And as pastors, that you need to understand that you're not going to be where you're at forever. It's just not going to happen. Well, Bill may be there, but who knows? But you need, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but you need to have a transition plan that I've seen. I'm going to say this, and then we'll get into kind of what we're looking at. I've seen where there's been transition in churches where the transition didn't go well because the pastor that was there did not prepare the church for a transition. And then the new pastor coming in had some difficulties in trying to get a foothold, trying to get established, trying to get a feel of what's going on and get support. So just be prepared, and when you move forward in your pastoral ministry, just be mindful of that time when the transition comes to prepare not only yourself but your congregation for that move out forward. But what we're going to be talking about is church planters to begin with here. And church planters, and I think pastors as well, they need to learn more of whether they're a catalytic church planter or a founding pastor, and how to move from a church planting person to a founding pastor person. And that is a transition that could be a little bit difficult to make. A catalytic church planter is someone who starts a church without intending to remain. They are a church planter in the true sense of the word. They are somebody that goes in, they establish a church, they begin working it, they begin cultivating the ground, cultivating the city, working with the people. They are the ones that put the foundation down in the ground, and like I said, that catalyst that begins everything to work with, that is that pastor, that planter that will come in and start that process in that way. And so what we're going to do is try to help the pastors determine what period they are in and transition successfully to the next phase that you have in your church as God leads. It mentions it here. I don't know if it's in your book, but it says some pastors are like, man, I could spend the rest of my life in this church. And other pastors are like saying, oh God, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to move on to something else. I'm sure there's more blessings out there that I need. So we're going to be talking to you a little bit, maybe encompassing a little of both sides of that as we move forward. But we want to be able to determine to have these successful transitions as God leads through your pastoral experience, through your pastoral phases, whether it's going from church planter into the pastor there to founding pastor to lead this on, or from founding pastor turning it over to a pastor that comes in behind you. But this has to do with the boss principle, number one. Christ is the Lord of healthy churches, and He has a vision for your church. That when your church was started, He had a vision for it. Before you got there, God had a vision of your church and where it was going and what it was going to be a part of and how it was going to develop. And now that you're there, God continues that vision that He has for your church. And you're a big part of that in moving forward. So if whatever you're in, we're going to be talking, a little bit about, like I said, the church planter and then the founding pastor. But section 1 is transitioning from the church planter to the founding pastor. And then if the church planter says, stays in the church, this transition will occur naturally. If the pastor that comes in there, lays the groundwork and establishes the church, remains, then it's going to be a natural transition because everybody's going to look at him and acknowledge him as such. But then section 2, we're going to be talking about the transitioning from church planter or the founding pastor to the next pastor. And this is where things could get a little tricky because there's a lot of people, a lot of conceptions that are going to have to be addressed as pastoral changes are made. And like I said, I think all of you have not been in your church from the very beginning. You've moved in following another pastor that was prior to you, and there were some transitions. There were some mindsets that had to be addressed. There were some feelings that had to be healed, if you would. There was some confidence that was needing to be built. And so these things are part of what this transition is going to look like. So transitioning from church planter to founding pastor. If you stay at the church that you planted long enough, someday you'll discover that it's you're no longer the church planter, you are the pastor now. That you have moved into the founding pastor because your responsibilities or what you're there for has changed slightly. From when you were a founding, that catalyst, that church planter, that you were there to grow the church. You were there, you were out beating in the bushes, you're knocking on doors, you're doing all this stuff. When you make that transition to founding pastor, then you have help to do that. There's a transition in the people also to where they're there for your support. You're not just worried about trying to grow this thing and trying to get people in and move forward. Now you're shifting gears a little bit to where that you are depending more on some of your core people to do the responsibilities, and your job moves on. Let's see if I can move. I read this somewhere. At some point you'll be past the startup phase and then going into the phase of church leadership. So in startup, I think it was said before that you're moving through this transition. I'm trying to talk too fast. When you're moving through this transition, that what you're doing is moving from a leader of groups or a group to being a leader of several groups in this as they begin to move and form into the church. And the definition is a church planter leads a church in the early stages of a new church. And so as the church planter is there, he's facing all these new challenges, and he's trying to get people engaged and involved, and he's moving in the new early stages. A church planter becomes a founding pastor when they move beyond the early stages of a new church. So they move from that early stages of gathering, of working, into more of the shepherd part of it, to where they're working on the needs that are in that congregation. Some common signs of transition to the founding pastor role is that here is you no longer feel that you're pushing the rock uphill, and if you stop, it'll roll back over and run you over. But you keep constantly pushing every day to make that move forward. Less splinter groups are leaving. When you are starting a church, that maybe there's some groups that come in that are just kind of testing the water, seeing where they fit the best. And in established churches, people do that the same way. They come in and they kind of test the water and feel, is this the place where I need to be? And I believe it's was said before that Brother Joe said, if not every congregation is made for everybody that comes through, that they need to feel comfortable, and don't be discouraged, don't be offended if that group kind of moves in, stays a little bit, and moves on out. The people who stay with the church stay because they see the vision, they connect with the vision. And some people are not going to connect with the vision that they have. There's a greater ownership of the vision by the people other than the original launch team and paid staff. Because a lot of churches, some churches, I won't say a lot, some churches, they have a staff that comes in to establish their church in an area. And that is their sole purpose, is to establish that. And then once they get the group, get the locals come in and get a group established, then they pull off and leave. And those people that are left there, those are the people that have the vision of what tomorrow looks like. And they are the ones that you need to really work with and get that going, because that's the ones that that are going to be the ones that are going to be your leadership and moving forward in what's happening here. You see a church with definite intentions for long-term missions once you get that group established. And in every church it works that way, is once we get that core group in here, we can start talking about long-term missions, seeing what's going to happen other than, we still need to work, we still need to build. C is to traps to avoid while moving from church planter to founding pastor. The maintenance trap. And to be honest with you, when I was pastor, and I think I fell into this maintenance trap of what it's talking about here. It's letting the needs of the church stop you from continuing to build the church. Is that I was so busy about addressing what was going on, and just there again in the back of my head, thinking if I take care of this group right here that's in these four walls, I'll be good. But I didn't look outside the four walls to be able to expand. I was so caught up in just dealing and addressing and working with the people that are here, and thinking that, well, if I take care of these people, we'll be fine. We'll be fine without any kind of check on going through this, and really not a big concern about building the church. I was all about maintaining. I need to keep the people I have. If I lose some of these people, it's going to be bad. It's not going to work out well. And so I think we need to be careful that we look at this, that we just don't get in this maintenance only. Just taking care of what we've got going on now and not reaching out and not working on building the church. Because Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:5, it says, as for you, always be sober-minded, enduring suffering, and here's the important part, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. Even as a pastor, we are supposed to be evangelists. We're supposed to still be reaching out. We're supposed to still be active in what we've got going on, still moving forward. Effective leaders help their church reach ever-increasing goals beyond just maintenance, reaching those goals beyond. They insist on continuing to evangelize what is going on. And I think Brother Bill said it, that he still has the evangelistic side that he's working with, but he has this side over here he needs to start working, like he said, with other people to really get that evangelizing to move. They endure the suffering required to build the church. And we've heard this over and over, and this, it seems like every lesson reinforces the other. Ministry is spelled W-O-R-K, like Brother Joe said. You can't get around it. You can't avoid it. You can't put it on the shelf. It is what it is. And we need to understand, and once we get in our mind that it takes work in evangelism and church growth to get out of this maintenance stage, then I think we're going to be able to see that vision to come to fruition when we move forward. What got you to this level will not take you to the next level. I thought that was a good thing here. We feel like we have reached this level, let's just keep doing what we're doing, and we'll continue to grow. Folks, we need to continue to improve. We need to continue to evangelize. We need to continue reaching out if we expect to get better and bigger and grow from where we are at right now. Doesn't matter what size your church is at. If you just keep doing what you're doing, then it's not going to grow. You have the heart loss trap. Letting your work for God destroy the work of God in you. As a pastor, you are the primary leader of this movement, of your church. That you are a highly critical part of the organization. Therefore, self-leadership is the most important leadership you exercise. You must do whatever it takes to keep your relationship with God on track and your heart intact. You can't lose heart. You can't be so focused on everything else. And we talked about this. One of the other things I mentioned is you've got to have you as number one on your prayer list. because you need to have God help you that you might help these other people here. The heart lust, letting your work for God destroy the work of God in you. Don't let that happen. Keep moving forward. The vision hack, it says here, trap, letting strong newcomers derail God's vision of your church. And I don't know if you've had any experience with this, but it seems like when your church begins to really get a hold of a movement, get a hold of God, the Spirit's moving, and it seems like the new people are coming in, you may have some of these people that come in and that God has put it on their heart to straighten out your church. God has put it on their heart to get you on the right track. You're a little off here, and you need to, God has given them the vision, the word that this church needs to move forward. But if it is contrary, pastors, with your vision, we need to address that, because that will destroy what all we have worked for. And God is not the author of confusion. God has placed a vision in your heart and within your church, and that is the vision you need to stay with. Because when we move forward, these people that come in, they may have a good heart, they may not. They may just come in to cause problems. But we need to do that. Every transferred believer has their own concept of what the church should be. Some of those concepts will help round out and implement your vision. They will complement what you have and the direction that you're going. Others will lead to the church away from its central mission, vision, style, or cultural target. So you got to be careful. You have to really and feel these things out. And I'm going to brag on Scott while he's not here. He had to actually address, he had to face these people and address them and tell them this is where it stops. And pastors, there may come a day when you have to do that, because people are coming in and they have come in and they want to straighten you out. They want to direct your vision. They want to change your vision. They want to change your culture. That we need to be careful of what happens and how things move within your church. Competing visions will derail the church if you allow them to. They will split your church, and they will take you offline here. So you need to be careful of that. Moving on, the discouragement trap, letting how you feel about setbacks dictate what you do or how you treat people. Therefore, refueling faith, hearing from God, receiving mentoring and outside encouragement, as well as old-fashioned perseverance, will help you cope. That you need a release valve somewhere, somebody. That there should be a name to this release valve that you have. Many times, it's your wife or your husband that things don't go well, and you just open up, and they're there to listen. And man, they listen, and they've heard a lot. So, but dealing with discouragement is on almost every church's leadership's top 10 list, because it's discouraging when things don't work out, when people don't work out in what you expected for them and the ability that you thought they would bring to the table here. The bitterness landmine, letting conflict harden you rather than mature you. It takes a huge sacrifice to grow a church. What you are doing right now takes a huge sacrifice in your time, in your finances, in your resources, and all that. It is a huge sacrifice. Everyone in the sacrificing core cares deeply about the cause and the group, or they wouldn't be sacrificing for it. If we didn't care about what was going on, we wouldn't be here today. We could care less. We'd just go floating by. We would be just whatever. Let's just keep what we've got and let's move on. We have come here today to learn how we can be better, to move forward, to gain souls for the kingdom of God. How do you handle these conflicts will determine the personality of your church. And there's 4 different personalities that your church can take when you look at these conflicts. One is an open church, where healthy conflict or discussion, or whatever you want to call it, is allowed. I mean, people, we are not going to agree on every situation, on every issue that comes up in business, everything that we spend our money on. We as a church are not going to agree on it. And it is healthy to discuss that. You know, it says it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. Being disagreeable, you don't change your mind. It's okay to say, I don't agree with this, but then kind of listen and move on from that point on. Being disagreeable is a disruption on this. You can have a closed church where conformity is the norm, where everybody's there like it's not going to make any difference anyway. The pastor's going to do what he wants to. He's going to buy what he wants to. He's going to go where he wants to. It's not going to matter what I say. That is not a good church to be in. That is, the closed church where it's going to happen anyway, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that. You have an unfinished issues church where suspicion and resentment reside. And so unfinished issues, everything is tabled. Everything is going to be, we'll talk about that later. We can discuss that later, and nothing everything's unresolved. It's just like up in the air, not sure when we're going to do it, what's going to happen, where it's going to go, what am I going to play in this whole part, what's going to happen here, and it's don't worry about it. We'll get to it when we get to it. So that is the unfinished issues. And then the factional church, where groups have squared off against each other over various issues. You've got the left side of the church and the right side of the church. They don't agree with each other. They never will agree with each other, because it's just one of those things that that you just need to get used to, and that's the way it is, Pastor. Just going to move forward and just like it or lump it. And so those last three kinds of churches are highly dysfunctional. They are going to cause you headaches. They're going to cause you problems. They're going to cause you sleepless nights. They're going to cause you ulcers and everything else. But that first church, the open church, where healthy discussion of conflict and healthy conflict is a good thing, to be able to work it out and not let it sit there and fester. So, as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with everyone. Romans 12:6. A lot of times we think about that with everybody else around us, but we need to think about with our fellow saints also, that it's good to live peaceably with them and work through that. As the church begins to grow, you will have some of these conflicts. You will have some of these discussions. You're going to have the older folks that don't like the music, that want to keep the blue books, that want to do this or that want to do that. And so it's going to be one of those things. You will have these issues to deal with. Let them speak their mind and then address it at that point. And you're going to have the younger ones that are going to go way out there, way ahead of everybody else. Maybe you have to just rein them in a little bit and say, let's slowly work on this. But you have to be able to do this, to live peaceably with everybody. The pedestal trap. And if we're not careful as ministers, we can get a hold of that. Allowing the things people say about us make you think you are more than what you are. And that is it. That people come up and pat you on the back about all that great word, the message that you did. Man, you handled that guy perfectly. It's like, oh yeah, look at me. I'm the guy. I'm the man God put here, and there's a reason that I am here. And so that's the way that sometimes it gets on our shoulder, that we get feeling way more important than what we should. Way more important than God expects us to be. You may not actually begin to believe that you're responsible for all your church's all your success, and not God. And so that's what we need to be careful. And you know what's bad about that? Is you base your worth off your success and not God's love for you. And then so that way, it brings us way up high on the successes. But then when things aren't successful, then we judge ourselves on that. We become discouraged. We become depressed. And we, maybe reach the point where we just throw up our hands and we're done. So that is important, that you don't put yourself on a pedestal, because it doesn't last long. Believing the first two of these two steals God's credit and risk his with withdrawal in order to remind you that He is really the one that is giving you the inspiration and guiding all these things. If God withdraws His Spirit and His anointing, you don't want that. Just a reminder. A good approach to being on a pedestal is thank God for what He has done for you. That's, it's. I'm sure you all do that, but when people come up and say, man, that was a good message, you said, thank you, appreciate that, thank the Lord for that. Glad, there's a response to that, because that used to be one of the hardest things for me, is to accept that kind of a thank, because I knew it wasn't me. I knew that they enjoyed the message because it was the Spirit. But anyway, thank the ones who you admire for believing in you and enlisting in the cause. Thank you. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being there. Thank you for working with me. Use the encouragement from others to strengthen you and inspire you, and then give God the credit for what's going on. That's important. The leadership development trap. Letting other churches supply most of your leaders in your ministry. This is the stealing from Peter to pay Paul type of mentality with church workers. That I know it's going to be difficult, and it's been discussed here this afternoon or today about developing leaders. We have to be able, and we have to look out in what we have and the congregation we have to develop leaders. And if we don't see anybody in that congregation, then we need to reach out and find somebody that we can have come in that would help us, that would be a leader, that we could develop in this role. And that's going to take evangelism. That's going to take reaching out and working with people, getting them interested in coming, working with them in having them step up. A key job of the apostle, prophet, and evangelist and the pastor is to equip the saints. Our job as pastors, as ministers, as leaders, is to equip the saints that are there and helping them, train them, work with them, and building the body of Christ. The goal of every church leader must be to have leadership development system implemented. And I think that goes, I think Bill said that is have a plan already in place, so that when you have somebody you identify, you don't have to start developing a plan at that point. You have it to where you can start moving them in that direction, to where they can start developing and working, and you know your first steps that you're going to have to be doing. The next one is the tradition trap. Letting the traditions you build steer you in the wrong direction. And here's 4 things that dangers of letting traditions dictate kind of where we go. See, building no traditions, you have no history. You have nothing, no establishment to go on. History, traditions are good. They can be good because they give us where we came from. They give us some of the points that we can build on. Building on too many traditions can freeze the church into a maintenance-only mode. Well, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're going to do it for the next 50 years. It's worked already. Let's just move forward with it. But what we need to do is limit those traditions to where they don't dictate how we conduct our services and how we worship now. Building traditions that are contrary to our core values. We have our core values. That's why it's so important to let everybody know and understand what our core values are, so that as things develop and as things grow, it enhances those core values. It doesn't work against them when we begin to put these and talk about them and work with those traditions. And these are nothing special. These are traditions, things people like to do. And building traditions that are so strong that you cannot change them. And I'm sure we have all ran across those traditions, that they are so strong that they actually become a part of the church. And it's a tradition. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But as the culture around you changes, we need to change with the culture. And sometimes those traditions limit what we can do on changes to be able to meet what's going on here. Transitioning. The transitioning from church planner or founding pastor to the next pastor. Succession planning. This transition might be sooner or it might be later. Jesus will always be with your church. You will not. You will not always be there. You will not always be there. Passing the baton is critical to winning the relay races. Success or failure depends on how fast not on how fast the runners are, but on how that baton is passed. And that's what I was talking a little bit about. Is that, and I'm going to give it a quick example before I move on. I did not do a very good job on this one in getting the time in. But when I was in high school, I was on a relay race, a relay team. And we had a guys' relay team and a girls' relay team. And so we were getting ready and everything. We'd already done our practicing on the guys' side. And so I sat there and I was watching the girls do their handoffs on passing off the baton. And I thought that was interesting. But yet when I got out into the race, I was like the second or third one in the relay. And it come up to my turn. I took off like I should, and I threw back the wrong hand. And that threw the whole system, the whole timing, and everything off, is that I threw back the wrong hand because that's the one the girls threw back. And it just stuck in my head to throw that one back instead of throwing the other one back. And that's the way it is, that don't look around to see how other people may have made this transition or how other churches have handled this transition. You pray to God and you seek God for His help in His transitioning on this moment, because God is going to be with you, that God's going to be with this church after you leave, and just focus on Him. Don't focus on the things around you. Focus on Him, and that transition will go well with what you have for that. And so, let me see here, the foundational facts about transitioning to the next pastor. We're going to get these just really quick. Every church will make the transition at some point. You are going to do it. Guaranteed. Your church, you will transition out and somebody else will transition in. So just be careful of that. Understand that. A poor transition can greatly hinder or even destroy the church. That if you don't prepare for it, if you start looking at the wrong things, the transition is not going to go well. A good transition to the right leader can result in significant church growth. I have seen this happen. That is, when the right man gets in there and God blesses him and the transition's done right, God continues to bless. A successful transition depends on prayer and the work of God. So God has to be involved. Prayer has to be involved. The uniqueness of the church planner role. Everyone who joins the planner wants the church planner to be their pastor. That first pastor that you have association with, that the people have association with, that's the one they want to stick with. That's the one they want there forever. That's the one they make the connection with. But we have to be careful that we work with them, and we're going to have people like that. You're going to be their favorite pastor, regardless of what goes on. And they form ties to that. And I don't know if you know Brother Don Thomas or Brother Howard Thomas. They were overseers of the Midwest on several different states, and they retired, and they have passed away years ago. But even years and years and years after they had pastored, they still had people come up and say, "You're my pastor. You're the one that made the connection with them." And so that is good, but as long as they accepted somebody else's pastor. I think I'm wandering here. Don't want to do that. The church planner sets many patterns that will reflect and be a long-term function of that church. Some of the patterns you set right now are going to be what's going to be in that church for a long time. The church planner will be the spiritual father figure for many. And that's what I was talking about with the two bishops there. It will be hard for someone to imagine their church without the church planner or without you. But that's where the transition comes in. And during his tenure, the church planner will usually be the greatest expert of the church. So that's all I have here. I'm way over on time. I'm going to go through here and see if we've got. Is there any blanks that? C is leave. Resources to help evaluate when it's time to leave your church. And I wish I'd have done better on my time. And then number 3, toward the end, there'd be Evaluate the fundamental question, where can I have the most impact for the kingdom? Do everything you can to prepare your church for growth is important on what we have here and what we've got here. Like I said, this has been really condensed and with what's going on, but like I said, we'll be more than happy to talk with you, to answer some of your questions, to go over some of the material that we had to kind of push tight or even go over. But we want you guys to really get the most out of this. And so if you have any questions, feel free to talk to one of us and we'll get things going here. So thank you very much. All I was going to do is toward the end.